Awesome. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Girls and STEAM Marine Conservation. My name is Heba, and I'll be your Science World host for the day. I would like to begin by gratefully acknowledging that Science World is located on the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. Just before we dive in for today, I would like to take a moment to remind everybody that this is a safe space. So make sure to please keep comments in the chat respectful and relevant to the discussions going on. Why don't we start by testing out our chat today? Where is everybody joining us from? Feel free to type your comments in the chat. And meanwhile, while everyone is doing that, I will give you a rundown of what we are doing today. So today we will be joined by Mckenzie Margarethe, who is a wonderful marine expert. We will have a short interactive presentation from them, and then we'll move on into our sign building activity. Make sure you have something to write on and something to draw and decorate your sign with. We encourage you to use pieces around your home to recycle what we already have. Be sure to share your signs once they're completed by posting them on our social media with the hashtag #GirlsAndSteam Before we begin, we would like to thank SAP and Acuitas Therapeutics for their generous support of these events here today. Now, I would like to welcome Mckenzie. Hi, Mckenzie.
Hi. Hi,
Well,
everyone.
hi. How
Thank
about
you.
off with a little introduction from you before we dive in to today's events.
Absolutely. So I'm Mckenzie Margarethe. I go by Mckenzie online, like the ocean. I'm a marine scientist and naturalist, so I have a background in helping people learn about the ocean as well as researching the ocean myself. You can use any pronouns for me, whatever makes you feel comfortable. I'm completely fine with. And today we're going to be talking about ocean acidification, which is something that I have researched myself and a part of myself and seen firsthand with my own two eyes. So I'm very, very excited to talk about it.
Amazing. We are very, very excited to have you. And then hello, Geraldine from Surrey. We're very excited to also have you. So if anybody wants to keep the comments coming of where you're coming from in the chat, you can also post any questions that you have for Mckenzie in the chat as well. A friendly reminder just to keep the comments respectful and relevant. All right, so how about we begin learning about ocean acidification?
Absolutely. So I have a little quick presentation for you all, so it has some good visuals. So I just wanted to show, if you guys ask your parents, and after this, if you want to see some of the videos, I teach about marine science online all the time. Make sure you ask your parents or your guardian though, and you can find me at Mckenzie online on both Instagram and TikTok. All right. So what are greenhouse gases? Do you guys know what greenhouse gases are? Have you heard that phrase before? I'm sure you have. These are things that we commonly produce when we burn fossil fuels, particularly. That's a big one, right? But there's other ways that we can produce fossil fuels. Cows produce them when they fart. We produce them when we breathe. All sorts of things, all sorts of different sources of greenhouse gases. And those things stay in our atmosphere. So our atmosphere, our planet, has a little atmosphere around it. And when we emit greenhouse gases, they kind of layer in our atmosphere. So when the sun hits our planet, it warms, and that heat is not able to leave our planet. So it stays inside the planet and starts to warm our atmosphere a little bit.
Mckenzie, I have a quick question for you. What are
Absolutely.
fossil fuels?
Oh,
Do you have
fossil
any
fuel.
examples? Yeah.
Well, of course, how we power our cars is a big one, right? Like the gasoline that we use to power our cars is a fossil fuel. Many cities still burn coal, and coal, the production of burning coal is a fossil fuel. So these are things that are in our planet, that have been on our planet for a very, very long time, that we are taking from our planet and then typically burning to create some sort of energy, which is what this graph kind of shows us. So the one on the left, the one that's blue, more blue, I should say, is showing what different types of greenhouse gases there are. So we have carbon dioxide, which is a big one. That's what you breathe out. That's one of the most common that's produced when we burn fossil fuels. There's also methane and nitrogen oxide, which are the big ones. And then fluorinated gases, that's a small one, which we won't really touch on today. But the graph on the right, the more rainbow graph, kind of shows you where those things are coming from. So we have things like the productions of fossil fuels, which is really big here in Canada, right? You guys have lots and lots of gas plants and fossil fuel lines. You have gas lines that run through the country. Canada is a big producer of fossil fuels. So one of the biggest marks for Canada is that production line. Then also transportation. So how we fly our planes, how we drive our cars, those things all mostly need fossil fuels to run. We now have, of course, electric cars, but also to make that electricity in a lot of places we're burning coal. So it has a long line. And there's other things like agriculture, so farming. Like I said, when cows fart, they produce methane. So we have a whole bunch of other little resources that go into fossil fuels as well, or go into the production of greenhouse gases, I should say. Now let's see next. So what is marine conservation? So I'm involved in marine conservation, and today you guys are going to get to partake in a little bit of marine conservation, and that's basically any action that is taken to protect, preserve, or restore our ocean's ecosystems. So this can be little things and big things that all contribute to making way to achieve marine protected areas, things like that. Those are what we're looking for when it comes to marine conservation. We want to take care of our oceans because when we take care of our oceans, they take care of us, right? So
that's such a lovely statement. I really like that. So when we take care of our oceans, they take care of us. I'm keeping that in my back pocket.
Oceans have so many resources they can provide for us, so we need to take care of them. They're a great resource for fighting climate change as well as feeding our planet. So we got to take care of our oceans. Unfortunately, when we're producing greenhouse gases, I always say our oceans get a good 1-2, back to back, because not only are they being affected by that warming process that we talked about, right? How greenhouse gases enter or we produce them, they stay in our atmosphere. When the heat hits our planet, it stays within our planet, starts to warm our planet, and therefore starts to warm our oceans. So when that happens, we get warming events, which we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about. But we also get things like acidification. So as we're producing CO2, I will show it to you a little bit in a second, our oceans are becoming more acidic. So in case you don't know acidic and basic, it's kind of a simple but a complex ideology or concept. So this is our pH scale. So if you think about drinking water, your pure water, that is neutral, that's 7 right in there. Then anything below that is what we consider acidic. So things like lemon juice, your stomach acid, all of those things are acidic. And the opposite of acidic is basic. So a base is anything that's above 7. And our oceans are about an 8.1. So they are basic, and that's similar to the chemistry or the acidity or the basism of an egg. So when you think about an egg, the eggs that you eat for breakfast, when you scramble them all together, very similar as far as chemistry to, not molecular chemistry, but acidic chemistry to our oceans. So what happens is when we're producing CO2 into our atmosphere, that CO2 gets absorbed into our ocean. Our ocean absorbs a lot of that CO2. In the ocean will take and dissolve carbon dioxide, which is CO2. So it'll dissolve that carbon dioxide and create what's known as carbonic acid. Now, of course, when you have an acid, when you're adding an acid to something, that'll make whatever it is more acidic. So as we are producing more CO2, our oceans are becoming more acidic. And we do, thankfully, have a quick demonstration that might make this a little bit easier to grasp. So we're going to put on a quick presentation that will show you just how our oceans are changing.
Awesome. Let's hear it.
Hi everyone, I'm Luciana, and today we're going to be looking at how carbon dioxide can be used to make water more acidic. Have a think about where we might be able to find carbon dioxide. I can think of one place, and that is actually with my breath. So if I can blow some bubbles into this water here, we should be able to make it more acidic. And one thing that's going to help us to see that is this bromothymol blue. Now, bromothymol blue is an indicator, so it changes color when it detects an acid. So I'll just put a few drops in, give it a little bit of a swirl. All right, and I'm going to just hold this so we can hopefully see it a little bit clearer. Here we go. And we have that blue turning to a bright, beautiful yellow.
That was great.
That's so cool. I love that demonstration. What a cool demonstration. So yeah, just like that, our oceans are actually having the same effect, right? So they're getting more acidic. So for some sea creatures, that's okay, right? Some sea creatures, they're like, that's fine. We're gonna be fine. But for a lot of our sea creatures, that they can't handle that change, especially that rapid change, right? They can't evolve fast enough to keep up with that rapid change of acidity. And the ones that are mostly affected or most intensely affected are our creatures that have what we call calcium carbonate skeletons. So these are things like coral. That's on your screen right now. This is what I have a background in, is coral. So on the right, or sorry, on the left, where the picture is a little bit more, the ocean looks more blue, right? We have a coral that's colorful, right? That coral has lots and lots of algae that's living with it. That is a healthy looking coral. Then on the right, when we have our white coral, we call that bleaching. So that's what happens. Corals actually become more fragile because of the acidification. So bleaching, we'll get into, it does have to do with warming, right? So as our oceans become more warm, those algae that live with coral that make it all colorful like it is on the left, they'll leave. And then on the right, we get this very sad looking coral that doesn't have any algae friends, and its calcium carbonate skeleton is becoming very, very brittle. And coral plays a huge part in contributing to you and I. Not only is it estimated that over 50 million people are fed because of the things that live on coral, but also we found life-saving medicines from our coral. We found things that help with cancer treatments. We've helped things that help with viruses. So there's huge viral treatments that can be found in our oceans. Like I said, our oceans will take care of us if we take care of them. So there's so many different resources that can be found in our corals. Our corals also protect us from storms. So when storms are coming in from the ocean or wave surges are coming in from the ocean, corals protect from that. So we need our coral reefs, especially for our coastal communities, like where Science World is located, or right on the coast. So we need these beautiful, beautiful things to keep our oceans nice and safe and secure for you and I. So, is there any questions so far? Because we're going to start moving into, go ahead.
Yeah, if anybody, just a reminder, if anyone does have any questions, you can put it into the chat. Yeah, and they'll pop up and we'll be able to answer them. So if anyone has any questions for Mckenzie, please feel free to just pop them in the chat anytime during the presentation.
Yeah, and I will do my absolute best to answer all of those for you guys. So this is the blob. So now we're into heating. Now I know this graph looks a little intense, but really it's when we look at it, it's a pretty easy graph to look at. So these are three different time frames. So we have 2014, 2019, and 2020. If you look at the gray area, that little gray area you can see is Canada, then the United States, you got Washington, Oregon, and California. So it's right off the coast, right off our Pacific coast is where we're looking at now. And the colorful area is our oceans. So this map shows us how warm our oceans were. So in 2014 to 2016, we experienced an extreme heating event. And we as scientists call this the blob because we're so creative. And so those really intense red areas, those deep, deep red, almost black areas are where it got very, very, very hot, right? So that's kind of what you're seeing. And it did cool down in 2019 and 2020 a little bit. You still see a bit of red and a bit deep red, but not as bad as 2014, right? And that continued to 2016 altogether. Now, one of the biggest effects was on our humpback whales. So I was a humpback whale naturalist. These photos were actually all taken by me. And I want to see if anybody else has seen humpback whales before. Maybe off the coast of BC, if you've visited Vancouver Island, if you've been on vacation with your family to Hawaii, or maybe Alaska, or even Mexico, Japan. Humpback whales kind of go all over the place. So has anybody seen humpback whales before? Have you, Hiba?
I've seen humpback whales, I think, when I was in Victoria, so on Vancouver Island. I was very, very lucky with my family when I was younger, and I love whales so much. So that was such an exciting experience to see them.
I know, I love them deeply. They're one of my
Yeah.
favorite creatures. So yeah, these were all taken by me. I was a humpback whale naturalist for quite a few years. And so we actually used these photos to help identify whales. So that kind of plays into what I'm going to talk about, is we would use their flukes. So the bottom photo on the left is their fluke coming out of the water, and we can use those flukes to identify humpback whales. They have different patterns and sizes and scars that we can use to identify humpback whales individually and see who's migrating where and what's happening. So that's how we figured out, and I'll go to my next slide, that's how we figured out that humpback whales had a hard time during that blob event. So humpback whales have a huge migration. They migrate from the North Pacific to the South Pacific and back every single year. The reason they do this is so that they can have a safe water to give birth to their young in. So their normal feeding grounds in places like British Columbia, off the coast of BC, and in Alaska, where there's lots of kelp, lots of krill. It's very dense water. It's kind of a bit murky looking, right? You kind of have lots of things in the ocean. Those areas are also where a lot of their predators live, like orcas. You guys have lots of orcas off the coast of Alaska and British Columbia. And some of those orcas are mammal eating. Not all, but some. And those guys for sure like the little babies. If they see a little baby, they're going to go for it. So the humpback whales migrate all the way down to Hawaii or Mexico to give birth in those very clear waters. There's no food for them though, so they're not eating that entire time they migrate. The moms lose a third of their body weight from going down to those regions, giving birth to their babies, nursing their babies, going back. It is a huge expedition that they undertake. So during this blob experience, this heating experience, we noticed that when they came back to the North Pacific, they had much fewer calves. They were a lot less babies to be had. The babies just didn't make it, or the moms couldn't give birth to a healthy baby. We also saw a lot less whales in general. A lot of the elderly whales didn't make it back to the North Pacific. And like I said, we can identify them individually by their flukes. So we knew who went and who didn't come back. And unfortunately, after that heating event, a lot of them didn't come back. And we are still trying to work on getting our humpback whale population a bit up there, right? We lost a lot of humpback whales in the 1900s. And so we're trying to work on getting that population back. And humpback whales are coming back pretty strongly, but these heating events make it so hard for them. So here are some things that you can do if you want to be involved in helping the humpback whales and helping marine conservation. So of course, being educated. Just being here today is already a huge step in contributing to marine conservation. You're already doing it. That's amazing. You are currently a little too young to vote, I'm sure. But if you are educated and educating those around you, you are making huge steps so that when you are at that age, or when you are ready, you're already knowledgeable. You already know what's going to happen and you can already contribute. The other thing, of course, is to raise your voice. You are never too young to have your opinion heard. The people around you are meant to hear you. And if you have educated yourself and if you have an opinion on something as important as marine conservation, you should raise your voice. You should say it. So make sure and those are things that you want to voice for, or for systemic change, for big change, right? We want our oceans to have some policies to help them. We want conservation to be seen in our governments, right? So today we're going to be creating some signs, right? So these are 2 signs. I've been in lots and lots of protests before, but these were some of my favorites. And I think that they're examples of things that you can, work off of. So the one on the left where it's nice and like a little blue ombre into green, that one says, girls just want to have fun, ding for their research. So it's kind of a clever thing. If you've ever heard the song, maybe your parents have and they can play it for you.
Yeah.
But it's Girls Just Want to Have Fun is a very popular song, and you guys can play it. And so it's a play on that. It's a little clever play on that. And this was at a climate march in Hawaii. That's right downtown Waikiki, outside of one of the more popular hotels. And this was a really productive march. We got lots of policies kind of going because of it. Then the one on the right, that is a protest at Sea Life Park in Hawaii. So one of the things that we were looking for, and always when you go to a protest, you want to make sure that that they have actions. It's not just a protest for whatever. They have actions that they are directly looking for. They have policies that they are looking to change. So that's what was happening on the photo on the right. We were at Sea Life Park because we wanted their policy on orca captivity to change. Their park in Sea Life, the park in Hawaii is quite small. So having orcas at that park was kind of hard for the orcas' health. It was just too small for them to be swimming. So my signs, some of them said, very thankful for the lives that you've saved, furious with the lives you've taken. Because that's how I felt, right? And that's a really good thing to put on a sign, is how you feel. I felt like I was very thankful for Sea Life Park and the things that they do as far as turtle rescues and seal rescues and rehabilitations, and they donate a lot to marine conservation research. I've actually gotten one of their grants for marine conservation research, which saved some of the coral reefs in Hawaii. So I was so thankful for all of that and the lives that they've saved because of all of that. But of course, I was upset by the lives that they had taken by keeping these big dolphins in really small tanks. Then another sign that I had was, the cost of knowledge is not innocent lives. Because of course, one of the things that Sea Life Park says is that they learn from their orcas in these really small places. And I said, well, yeah, but I don't think that's the right way to go about knowledge. So those were how I felt, and that's why I put them on signs, right? So there's kind of 2 different ways of having a sign. You can have something that's clever and fun, or you can have something that says how you feel. So I also got some examples for you guys, maybe ones that you might connect with a little bit more. I tried to find ones that were for the youngins, right? So we have kids here, one that says, I want to live long enough to play Fortnite. I don't know what Fortnite is. I'm assuming it's a video game that has some violence and fun in it.
I think that's a pretty good guess. Yep.
So kids want to live long enough to be able to play this game, right? I love that. And the other one says, I'd be in school if the planet was cool, which I think is such a clever take that also rhymes, right? Cool as in temperature wise, but cool as in it's a cool thing to be out there and protesting. Great. The other one is no cap, which I think is such a funny, clever sign, right? No cap is, of course, a slang term nowadays for not lying, but our ice caps are also melting. So this protester used that as a very clever way to use her sign. I thought that was brilliant. And then, of course, some more we have, the climate is changing. Why aren't we on the same wavelength? I have seen the ocean is rising and so are we. Those are some big common ones that you can make. There is no plan B on planet B. So we don't have another planet we can go to, right? We have to take care of the one that we're on, the only planet we have. We don't have a planet B. And then this sign, which I just think is so cute and so clever, is the planet is hotter than Timothy Chalamet. If you have a celebrity crush, I think that's so clever. Mine would say Kate McKinnon. I'm sure you guys have no idea who that is, but ask your parents. They will probably know. But she is my celebrity crush. I think she's incredibly beautiful and so smart. And that's what my sign would say. The planet is hotter than Kate McKinnon, but not by much.
Very fair. Very fair.
Do you have a celebrity crush, Hiba?
Oh, I think I have too many to list in the time that we have, honestly. There's many I could pick and choose from. Maybe you'll see it on my sign. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. So if you guys have any questions for me, please throw them in the chat. And we're going to do an activity of creating signs. Hiba and I are going to work together. I have my things here. This is a PR package that someone sent me. I'm going to cut this up to make a sign with. I have all my pens and stuff. And we're going to chat and we're going to make signs together. And if you guys do create a sign and you ask your parents' permission, and they can post it on social media, we would love, love, love to see what you've created. And you can use the hashtag Girls and STEAM Save Our Seas.
Awesome. Exciting. Well, thank you, Mckenzie, for the great presentation. We're ready to make signs and hear any questions and get any questions that anyone has. So if anybody in the audience has questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. And we'll probably, keep making signs and answering questions as we go. A question that I have for you, Mckenzie, while we start to kind of get our materials. I have my materials ready here too to make signs. I was wondering, what got you interested in kind of marine conservation? And you mentioned you were a humpback naturalist. So how did you get interested in that?
Yeah, so I grew up in Hawaii. So I was born in Canada, but I grew up in Hawaii. I moved there as a little girl with my family, and we had family there as well. So I moved to Hawaii as a little girl, and I've always loved the ocean. A fun fact about me is I actually learned how to swim before I learned how to walk.
Oh, wow.
So I've always been a water person. And so I loved the ocean. I went to college originally for forensic science. So I went there for the things that you see on CSI and such. And the reason I did that is because, unfortunately, the marine sciences and the marine conservation are a pretty underfunded field. We don't have a whole lot of funding, and that can be really intimidating, right? I didn't grow up with a whole lot of financial security, so I wanted to create that for myself. But while I was there, my professors and the people around me noticed that I was really good at what I was doing, that I was a wonderful scientist, but that I wasn't enjoying it, that I didn't really care. I just kind of was doing it to do it. And they're like, is that what you want for your life? Do you want to do a job that you just don't really care and that you're doing? And I was like, no, not particularly. And they were like, well, maybe you should try and do an internship for marine science. And I was like, okay. Because I loved the ocean. I was always the person that came to school with sand in my toes still and like sand in my hair, my surfboard attached to me still, and they're like, you should try and do a marine science internship. And so I did a marine science internship at the Hawaii Institute for Marine Biology. If there are any parents that are watching, it's out on Coconut Island, which is where Gilligan's Island was filmed. So that island is actually now a marine science lab. Has a whole bunch of science that goes there. So I went and did my first internship was in a lab for coral reef. So that's how I started in coral reef. And I loved it. I loved every part of it. I loved the whole thing. And from there it was, okay, this is what I'm doing. And so I continued doing research. I continued with that passion. And then I wanted to be able to teach others and show others how amazing the ocean is, because I recognize that not a lot of people have access to the ocean, right? That most of people don't have access to the ocean. So I was like, I want to teach people. I want to show people how wonderful it is. And so I got into being a naturalist. And the first job I ever applied for was the humpback whale naturalist position. And they gave it to me. They were like, you are very articulate. You want to enjoy them. So I did. And I talked about it. And it was a really fun time.
Yeah, that's amazing. What is like one of the most exciting or one of the coolest things that you've seen as a humpback naturalist, or even in any of the things that you've done?
Oh, I've seen so many cool things.
I'm sure, yeah.
Funny enough that if you remember the pictures that I showed of the humpback whales, there was one that was breaching, a photo. Like breaching is when the whale is coming completely out of the water, right? The big jump out of the water. So that day was actually my very first day as a humpback whale naturalist. And I had been around humpback whales before, and I had some experience with them just because I grew up in Hawaii and they come there every year, right? And so I knew what I was looking for. And I was just there looking, and they were like, all right, trying to train me and stuff. They were giving me like training stuff. And I was just kind of watching. And then I got the breaching photo, and they were like, oh, I don't think you needed the training that we are trying to give you. So that was my very, very first
You're
day.
natural. You were perfect. You're meant for it.
Yeah, I absolutely enjoyed it. And I've seen so many cool things. I worked on a submarine for quite a few, little over almost 2 years. So the same company that I was a humpback whale naturalist for, I transferred and worked on their submarines. So they
Oh,
have
wow.
submarines in Hawaii. And so I saw so many cool things on the submarine. We've seen whale sharks. Whale sharks will come right up to the submarine sometimes. That's one of the coolest things. It was actually I was the naturalist on the tour, and so I was giving the tour and I was, doing stuff, and there was this little kid that was sitting next to me, and this little kid turns to me and he was like, Miss, a shark, a shark. And I kind of ignored him because I was in the middle of my tour, and so often kids are
Yeah.
like, shark, and it's really a big fish. So I was just kind of like, sure. And I shouldn't have ignored him because he was like, no, miss, shark, shark. And sure enough, I ducked down, and through his viewfinder was a huge whale shark coming up right along the
Wow.
submarine. And I was like, I should have listened to you. I am so
Yeah.
sorry. And there was this giant whale shark, and it was so intriguing. And we were just about to come up. So we have a whole come up procedure, right? When we're bringing the submarine back to the surface, and we have this whole procedure that we're supposed to go through. And so I told my pilot, there's a whale shark next to us. There's a whale shark next to it. And so he stopped the procedure, the surfacing procedure, and he was pulling my hair because I kept trying to see the whale shark, but then I was blocking his view from seeing the whale
Oh,
shark.
yeah.
So he was pulling me back because he needs to see,
Oh
because
my
the pilot
gosh.
obviously needs to see it more than I do. He needs to make sure that he's not, interfering with the wildlife and making sure that he's being a safe distance, and all of these are very important. So I kept trying to
Yeah.
get in his way, and he kept just yanking me back, and he was like, no, I need it.
Oh
It's
my
more important.
gosh.
And I was like, it's more important that I see it.
That's fair. That's very fair. Well, Geraldine asked a really great question. Like, were you afraid when you saw the shark, or are you ever like kind of afraid of some of the things that you do in your jobs ever?
No, I've never been afraid of sharks necessarily. So many of the sharks that we see are small sharks. So we see things like white tip reef sharks and black tip reef sharks, and those guys are really small. And I actually find those sharks to be incredibly interesting. Most sharks have to keep swimming, are always swimming, so that they can push water past their gills. So sharks can't stop swimming. They're always swimming, except for a few. And the white tip reef shark is one of those few. It can actually sit down on the bottom of the sea floor. Then it has a really powerful jaw, and it can use that jaw to pump its own water past its gills. So I think they're so interesting. But there's definitely been times when I was surfing, and we have lots of tiger sharks in Hawaii, and tiger sharks are a more aggressive shark. And sharks never really go for people intentionally. It's more of they misunderstand people. Like our silhouettes on surfboards can look like turtles or can look like seals, right? From the bottom looking up, kind of look like seals. So there's definitely been times when I was surfing and somebody yells out, shark, and you just start paddling back in. You're like, and so it's not necessarily a scary thing, but more of like a safety precaution. Like I recognize that I'm in their area, I'm in their territory, that this is the shark's zone, right? Not mine technically. And so I just try and safely leave them alone. I have not a fear of them, but more of a safety precaution of them.
Yeah, that's fair. That's totally fair. Well, that sounds very adventurous of you, something I could probably possibly never do. And so props to you for that. I was wondering, what do you think is kind of when in your career, what has been kind of a big challenge that you've faced throughout your time?
Um, Definitely being a woman and being a queer woman in science. Um, you are commonly overlooked or underestimated. And it's something that I talk about a lot. I try and encourage girls to get involved in STEM, obviously get involved in STEAM, part of these events, right? But there's often times where you are underestimated as a woman. And that's been a challenge of mine. And I just learned that you just do your job, just make sure that you are, doing the things that are expected of you. And, people always say that you need to work harder than men. And sometimes you do, but I try and not, overwhelm myself. I don't want to have to work 3 times as hard to get half the credit. I'd rather work and do an excellent job on the work that I have to do. I would rather do, have my tasks and do my tasks to the best of my abilities, and just have my, my expertise and my, strengths in science show that I am an attribute to a team. And that's been a huge benefit for me. People will see that. People will see, oh yeah, she tries really hard.
Yeah, that's such a great, like, an important sentiment to say, because I think sometimes it's very important for other people to see other kind of women in STEAM and be like, hey, she looks like me, or she's like me, and that's what I want to do. But do you have any advice for people who are wanting to kind of go into marine conservation or any other similar fields?
Oh, absolutely. I think marine conservation and marine science are fields that are all about who you know. Don't feel so overwhelmed that you have to go to the best school. I feel like people feel that really when you're in high school. They're like, I have to get into the best school because that's what matters. When you get to the workforce, your education, like we have a thing called a curriculum vitae, which is kind of like a resume, but just a little bit more in depth, right? That's what scientists use. We abbreviate it to CV. That's what it stands for, curriculum vitae. And it basically is a archive of all of the things you've done, all of the research you've been a part of, all the conferences that you've spoken at, all of those things. And so it's usually a couple pages long, right? And I remember making my first CV, and I, had some research. I had spoken at conferences. Sorry. I had done things, and I had put my education first because I was like, obviously that's important. I, have been doing this for so many years and stressing myself out for so many years. Obviously that has to be the most important thing, right? That I have this education, that it took me 4 years to get it, and all this stuff. It's going at the very top of my CV. And I remember handing it in to get reviewed from the people around me, the other, professors around me. And they were like, move that, put your research first, put your experience first, put your conferences first, put all of that first, and then your education. And I was like, what do you mean? I want you to see my education first and foremost.
I mean, you worked so hard for it for 4 years.
Yeah. And they were like, no, that's not what matters. What matters the most is what you've done, the things that you've been a part of, the teams that you've been a part of. Those are what people really care about. And so that definitely was something that I learned, that it's more about the experiences that you do, the internships that you do. Those things come first when it comes to a lot of marine science, right? So when you're getting into marine science, when you're, don't stress about what school you have to get in. You don't have to get into the best school. What you need, you need experience. That's the big thing, is getting experience. And a lot of experiences in marine science come from who you know.
Very fair. Do you have any kind of resources for people to dive in deeper to kind of get those experiences in research? Like you said, I know there must be so many out there, but maybe if you want to touch on some of the experiences that you had. You mentioned you presented a lot of conferences and presented your research, which sounds so interesting. I am like a big on research. I love research so much. So I love hearing about other people's research too.
So a lot of my experiences, of course, come from the States, because my education is all from the States. So it's a bit different, right? And so I want to I know most of our audience today is from Canada, and there are actually a lot of resources here in Canada. I'm partaking in a program with OceanWise. So I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you guys know who OceanWise is. It's a big program specifically out of Vancouver, but they kind of are all over Canada. And they have a program. They have two programs primarily. One's called Ocean Bridge and one's called Direct Action. So Ocean Bridge kind of gets you more networking, gets you more involved with people. I'm about to go on a learning journey with them. So we're doing a 10-day learning journey where we stay at Camp Keats in Vancouver, and we sail on the Providence 1903, which is the oldest sailboat in British Columbia, and just like a whole bunch of stuff that I get to experience with them, because I'm still learning how to connect with people in Canada, right? So much of my experience comes from the States, and like I said, networking is such a big part of marine science, and so I'm learning how to how to do that here in Canada. And that's a program that's massively helping me with meeting people and getting to talk to people at universities for my graduate studies and things like that. Huge part of that. So I'm very fortunate to have been a part of that program. The other program that they have is Direct Action. And I also got accepted to that program, and I'm just kind of waiting. That's why I'm doing the Ocean Bridge one for now. But it's a 3-month full-time internship somewhere. So I would be going somewhere, probably somewhere remote, for 3 months on my own. So I'd be leaving my family and my partner and my dogs for 3 months, which will be sad.
Oh.
But it's, you know, such a cool opportunity. So that's a big thing. There's also a lot of like groups on Facebook, a lot of like marine conservation groups on Facebook that will help you find these experiences. Oh, I think we have a question. How do you
we
help
do.
protect sharks? Oh, that's
Very,
such a
very
good
good question.
one. I
Yeah.
love that. There are quite a few shark conservation places out there, organizations out there. My favorite is probably Project Hui, which is done by a girl out of Australia, and she works to help eliminate illegal shark finning. So shark finning is a really sad thing that happens to our sharks. We kill a lot of sharks every day here on this planet because shark fins are seen to be a medical use. They also are seen for other things. And so we unfortunately kill a lot of sharks, which are really important to our oceans. They're a apex predator, a lot of them, right? And that's a huge part of our marine ecosystems is caring for them. So making sure that we're, you know, if you can, being involved with those groups. I have some like shark teeth jewelry. I can show you one. And, you know, and so if you are ever getting that kind of stuff, making sure you know where those shark teeth are coming from. So I had the person that send me the certificate of where it came from. Hold on.
Oh, very cool.
So this is a shark tooth that was found because sharks, funny enough, sharks actually lose their teeth pretty readily. So they have rows and rows and rows of teeth. Unlike us that just have one row, they have several rows of teeth, right? And then as the teeth get used, they will fall out and then the other teeth will just move forward. So that's kind of how their teeth work. They'll just move forward and create more teeth. So there are, of course, ways to ethically find shark teeth because they fall out, you know, all the time. You can find them on the beach. But also because of the illegal shark finning trade, a lot of shark teeth will come from that. So making sure that if you're getting shark jewelry, which I know is very popular, that the teeth are coming from an ethical source is a good one. We recently made sure that there was no more shark trade. I'm pretty sure Canada has it done. The United States, I'm pretty sure, is working on it. Hawaii has no more illegal shark. Like you're not allowed to purchase shark fins or anything like that in these regions. And so just, you know, getting involved, it's a long process. We're working on making sure our sharks are protected. They are so important to our oceans. But yeah, that's a big one. That was a cool question. I loved that question.
That was a great question. Thank you for your question, Ida. Yeah, that was awesome. I love to hear that you like got a certificate of where your tooth or the shark tooth came from. I think that's so important to know where like where it's coming from. Yeah. And I see we have a question from Gloria. Do sharks grow teeth?
Yes. Yeah. They grow their teeth. They are always growing new ones. So they have, like I said, they have rows of them, and then they'll just, as they lose them, they'll push the next one forward, grow some more. I always think how unfair it is that we have to constantly be brushing our teeth and caring for them, or we're paying so much money to make sure that there are no cavities because we only have one set of adult teeth, and sharks just have all the teeth in the world. They can have so many teeth.
Oh, interesting.
So unfair.
So when they lose a tooth, do they grow it back?
Eventually, usually it goes from the back, so they'll kind of have like smaller teeth in the back, and they just push them forward as they lose their teeth.
Ah, very, very interesting. Well, look at that. We're all learning new facts today about sharks. Thank you for your question, Gloria. Awesome. I have another question for you, just as you were talking about like kind of the experiences that you've had and things like that, what kind of skills do you think you've needed to use in your career? You mentioned networking a lot, so I'm sure communication is a really important part of that, but I'd love to hear some other skills that you think are really important for you.
Yeah. It depends on what you want to get into as far as marine conservation. Marine conservation is a huge field. Like if you have a specialty in anything, we can probably utilize it in some sort of conservation, right? So I have a strong background in science. I'm very good at all the sciences. It's just that's my specialty. It's, so I contribute as far as research. But my other good specialty of mine is being able to communicate, is being a really good naturalist. I have so many years of naturalist experience. So that's why I became a science communicator. So it's always playing off of what you're best at. I have quite a few people in marine conservation that not very good at science, excellent writers. And we are always needing excellent writers. We need grants to apply for. So of course, writing is a big one. It's all about kind of playing to what you know, right? And sometimes you don't know what your best skills are yet. You still have to, feel those out, but you'll figure them out as you're going through school. You'll be like, oh, this is what I'm best at. And there's always a way to apply that. I'm doing a panel event next week because we're coming up on World Oceans Day, which is so exciting. And part of that panel, one of the panel topics, I'm not sitting on this one, but I'm going to listen to it, is about using your skills for marine conservation, because people have all sorts of different skill sets, right? We have in that panel event, we have people who are filmmakers, who are excellent filmmakers and really good artists and good at editing stuff. And so that's how they contribute. They make films that help people understand. If you're an artist, you can make a bunch of art that helps people communicate marine science. There's just so many ways to be involved and using any form of your skills. So even though my skills are science, I don't want to say like you need to be good at science to be in the marine field, because you don't. If you want to be in marine research, then yeah, you're going to have some science background, and you're going to have to go through the process of all of that, which isn't easy, but it's not a necessity to get into marine conservation whatsoever. I think anybody can be in marine conservation. If you love the ocean, there is always a place for you in this field, and we'll use your strengths.
Definitely. Thank you. That's so exciting. I also had by the way, everybody, I love the questions that are coming in. We have a couple more minutes until we wrap up. So if you do have any more questions for Mckenzie, feel free to keep them coming. There's some great questions. I see one more from Gloria, which is a very great question. Who pays you as a humpback naturalist? Yeah. So I remember you mentioning that one of the challenges kind of were funding. But yeah, we'd love to hear kind of in your past experiences what kind of that looks like.
Yeah. So as a naturalist, I was paid through the company that I worked for. So now as a science communicator, kind of like an online naturalist, I get paid through a bunch of different resources, and I kind of make my own funding, and I'm my own boss, and which I really enjoy. But when I started as a marine naturalist, I worked for a touring company. So that touring company is who paid me. That's how a lot of naturalists start, is with touring companies, but there's other ways that naturalists can be utilized. The baseline of a naturalist is species identification. So you need to be able to identify different species. So you don't have to have any educational background, technically, like at all. Some of the best naturalists I've worked with are people who didn't even have a high school diploma, but because they were from the region, because they knew and were taught by their elders, they were so good at identifying species and by teaching people about those species. And so you don't have to have, any specific education background. So there are some programs that you can enter into that are like naturalist programs that they can be kind of expensive, a couple $100. They will help you with learning about species identification. But you don't necessarily need them. I never did a course. I just had the background because I grew up there. So I started with a tour company, but there are other places that you can work. You can work at a museum. There's a lot of naturalists that work at museums. And there's also naturalists that will work on research vessels. So a lot of the researchers, they don't have time to sit there and and label all the species that they're seeing and labeling all the behavior that they're seeing, because they're doing research. They're trying to do tags, they're trying to collect samples, they're trying to do a whole bunch of other stuff. So they don't have the ability to sit there and catalog all the stuff that's seen. So they'll ask naturalists to come on board and be the naturalist for that. And they'll just document all the species that they see and the activities that they see. So there's lots of different ways that you can get paid as a naturalist. I got paid as a tour, basically a tour guide. But we're, we still document and provide photos for identification and that kind of stuff. So that's a little bit of a background. You are, for the audience, you're basically their tour guide, but at the end of the day, there's also extra work that you have to do as a naturalist, which include helping with identifications. So lots of different ways.
Very cool. Very cool. And thank you again, Gloria, and for that question. That was a great question. I have a quick question. I follow you on Instagram, and I know you also have a TikTok, which is very exciting. And I love that you're using those kind of platforms for marine conservation education. So I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about that and how you kind of started using those platforms to spread awareness. What gives you ideas for your content that you make on those platforms?
Yeah, so I love to constantly be learning. I am always reading. You can see I have lots and lots of books. I'm a big reader, so I'm always reading. And sometimes I'll come across something that I didn't know before. And so I'll write that down. And I'm like, okay, I got to write that down because I didn't know it. I got to write it down and I'll revisit it. And then I'll go and I'll spend some time researching that topic and getting into that topic and learning about that topic. And then I'm like, I have to share this with people. Others have to know about it. That's a big one of how I come up with things. But also a lot of times it's things where as I'm reading, it's something that like I knew before and that I just kind of had forgotten, or it was sitting at the back of my brain. And that's something that I knew. And I'm like, oh my goodness, people need to know about this. People need to hear about this. It's something that's so interesting. So I just have always loved science communication and, teaching people about the oceans, because I think that you are so much more willing to be in conservation and to protect our oceans if you love them and if you know, and if you have a little bit of knowledge and background. So that's how I started doing it. And I just love it. I love teaching people. So I'm always, as I'm reading, I always have a book next to me. I have it right here. Like this book is so filled just with everything that I can think of.
That's amazing.
When I'm doing stuff. It's my book of everything. So there's just so much in here. It is packed. It's almost time for a new book.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, but it is just packed with all sorts of me taking notes on the things that I have. And I'm like, people need to hear about this. I need to teach about this. And so that's what I do. And whenever people ask about becoming a naturalist, I say, you need a book. I have a drawer full of them. I have my craft thing that I have my supplies for creating our posters in, which is what I'm doing. I'm doing my outline right now.
Sorry, I've asked you so many questions. No. I didn't even give you a chance to finish your sign.
No, it's okay. I'm still doing my outline. But I have so many books that are just packed with me having taken notes. And that's a big thing. If you ever wanted to get into a naturalist, I say you need your naturalist book, because there's a fish anatomy, me drawing fish anatomy. So you just want to make sure that you're always taking notes on things, that you're always doing stuff, that you always, because you can always expand your knowledge, right? Like I've spent years with humpback whales and I'm still learning new things about them all the time. There's always so much to learn.
Definitely. I'm sure. I love that you have a book, because funny enough, my book is on the other side of my room. I also have my big book of things that I love to learn about. So I love that you have that too. It's so nice to see that. And we have another great question from Shane L. How many whales have you seen? Oh, that's a good question.
That's a great question. I've seen, so fun fact, all dolphins are whales, not all whales are dolphins. So if we're including dolphins in that, because they are technically toothed whales, so they are technically whales. I've seen so many. I've seen spotted dolphins, spinner dolphins, bottlenose dolphins. Bottlenose dolphins are scary. They are big. They are so big and scary. They scare me more than sharks. hands down. Bottlenose dolphins scare me more than sharks do. They are so big and smart. Oh, scary. um, Lots of pilot whales. Pilot whales are a dolphin. They have like the killer whale. They have a funny name where they are technically whales, but they all also are dolphins. So pilot whales, false killer whales. We have false killer whales in Hawaii. The killer whale, the humpback whale. I think that might be it as far as what I've seen personally. Of course, I've done lots and lots of reading people's research on other cetaceans throughout the whole world. Cetacean is a big term for all whales, dolphins, and porpoises. So if you ever hear the word cetacean, that's what it's referring to, is that big class of basically of those marine mammals. So the porpoises, dolphins, and whales, all called cetaceans. And then we have two big types of cetaceans. We have the toothed cetaceans and the filter feeding cetaceans. So the toothed guys, of course, are like dolphins and orcas that have teeth and are predators. They go after their prey. Whereas humpback whales and blue whales are filter feeders. They have a thing called a baleen, and they use that baleen to filter feed. So two big types of cetaceans, and I've seen quite a few, but I want to see more. Always hoping to see more. I want to see so many.
I'm sure
Yeah.
you do. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you, Shane L, for that question. And if anyone else has any last questions that they want to ask Mckenzie, we can frantically type at the chat, and we can try to fit that last one in. Yeah, but thank you so much, I guess, for joining us too. It was so exciting to have you. I want to say that before kind of we wrap up and hear any other last questions that people may have. I guess very quickly, while we're waiting for maybe one more question, one super quick question I have. What are you excited for the future?
Oh, so much. I'm so excited. I'm so excited for all the research that's coming out. I'm excited for all of the deep sea research that we're now doing. We're now capable of so much more deep sea research. I'm excited for Fabien Cousteau's research facility. So we already have a lab that's located beneath the sea that's called the Aquarius Reef Base. So we have that's off of the coast of Florida. But Fabien Cousteau, who's the grandson of Jacques Cousteau, he is building a reef base that's a little bit less cramped. The Aquarius Reef Base is a cramped facility. It is very small. I think it's like 47 feet long, and
oh my gosh.
and that fits beds, toilets, research equipment, everything in it. So it's a cramped space. So Protus, which is the one that Fabien Cousteau is making, is a bit bigger. I would pay so much to go on that, give my left kidney to go on Protus. I'm excited for the further classification of our orcas. We have orcas currently just kind of all under one category, and I think throughout my lifetime we're going to start categorizing those into subspecies. Oh, there's just so much that I'm so intrigued with. There's so much research. I could go on forever. That's not an easy question. I'm so
no, that's so okay. That sounds good. That was my bad for prefacing it. Here's this quick question that I want you to answer.
There's just
awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. That was so exciting. I think that's all the time that we have. What does yours say, Mckenzie?
Mine says girls in STEAM, save our seas.
Oh, that's so exciting. Mine says, I think, oh, there you go. You can see it. Be the change, see the change.
That's so cute. That's so cute.
Thank you. I enjoyed it very, very much. That was yeah, I love making signs. I think this is gonna be my next foray.
Make sure you guys tag them. I'll definitely post mine once I'm done. I'm a perfectionist, so I outlined it first and then I'm gonna draw it. I'm a weirdo. Don't mind me. You don't have to be
That's
like
very
me.
fair.
But I'm gonna outline this first. So definitely take pictures. I can't wait to see all of your guys' pictures. Make sure you hashtag it for us.
So share your signs online with the hashtag Girls and STEAM Save Our Seas. And we would, like Mckenzie said, we would love to see everybody's signs that they made. So a big thank you once again to Mckenzie for joining us today. And our next Girls in STEAM event will run on June 25th. Where we will learn all about unusual STEAM careers. And this event is in partnership with the Society for Canadian Women in Science and Technology.
So cool.
Very cool, I know. And if you would be interested in seeing any parts of this program again, the stream will stay active, and you can also find a recording of this session on our YouTube page. Thanks everyone again for all your amazing questions and for joining us today, and keep exploring the world of STEAM. Bye everybody.